Hi, Estelle.
Oh, hi, Lois. Where are you? I can't see your icon.
No?
Okay. No, actually, yes, I can.
Okay. Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah.
We have to get out today. It's getting nice. Huh?
I know.
Yeah. So
The cold we had a few days ago.
I know that day. It's supposed to be 56. I just saw on Thanksgiving, which is.
Oh, really? Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. So one can get out, I mean, in the next couple of days.
Right. Also, they were showing all over the country that it's pretty calm now, so that travel won't be as bad as they thought it would. But traveling is always difficult.
Oh, it's always difficult, always. You never know what you're going to encounter when you travel. You have to be prepared.
It's true. It's true.
Anyway, have a lovely Thanksgiving.
And you too, Estelle.
Thanks.
I think the rabbi has joined us.
Hi, Rabbi.
Hi, how are you? Hi. Hi. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, let's go. Dookie. All right, so yesterday we were talking about the mitzvah to sanctify God's name. So once again, one of the things that he has suggested here, and he also suggested with the love of God, which you don't hear other people emphasizing as much, is he understands it's a command to sort of share God and the faith in God with the rest of the world. When it comes to the mitzvah of loving him, he said, this is what you would, when you love somebody, you want people to know about them so that they can love them as well. And over here with the mitzvah of sanctifying him, that's what he seems to say. So again, we typically think of, and this is sort of what I was ending with yesterday, when we talk about sanctifying God's name, we typically think about dying in a way that sanctifies God's name, being willing to die or to suffer in God's name. But he seems to be emphasizing that this is a way of life, that living life that would model faith in God in a way that others would then be moved and inspired, that is Kiddush Hashem. It means that should somebody try to stop you from doing that, that you should resist. And many times, even if with loss of life. And there might be some exceptions to that, but it, again, the emphasis being on a way of life, not just something that is meaningful because somebody is threatening you. Okay. Did we read the whole thing? I think we did. He also said that when he was specifically talking about Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, which were three, they were amongst the Jews who were taken to Babylonia when they were young and raised in the court of the emperor of Nebuchadnezzar. there were many Jews that were brought in those circumstances. They are prophets eventually, and they famously refused to bow down to an image, and were thrown into what would have been their death, a fiery furnace, and they are miraculously saved, and they do not die. And he was just saying that Yeshayahu, Isaiah, had prophesied that this would happen. The prophecy was, "No more shall Yaakov be shamed, no longer his face grow pale. For when he, that is his children, behold what my hands have wrought in their midst, they will sanctify my name." So he is suggesting that the sanctification of God's name by Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah was that sanctification. The language of the Sifra is, "On this condition did I bring you out of Egypt, on condition that you sanctify my name among the masses." And in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, they said, is a Gentile commanded about the sanctification of God's name, or is he not commanded? Come and hear, the children of Noah were commanded to observe 7 commandments. And if you say like this, there would be 8, because if you look at the list of 7, sanctification of God's name is not in that list. Behold, it has become clear to you that it is among the commandments that are obligatory for the Jews. It's the way it talks about it here that convinces the Rambam that this is a separate mitzvah to be counted, because when it talks about it amongst the Gentiles, the Noachites, the Gemara says if they had been obligated in it, they would have 8 commandments. So you see, it's a commandment worthy of counting. So since we do have this, it should be a commandment worthy of counting. That's why he puts it as one of the 613. Behold, it has become clear to you that it is among the commandments that are obligatory for the Jews. And they brought his saying, and I shall be sanctified in the midst of the children of Israel, as a proof for this commandment. And the regulations of the commandment are being explained in the 7th chapter of Sanhedrin. And he spoke about it in the, and we studied that when we were studying the Mishnah Torah, that first book of the Mishnah Torah, the book of knowledge. And in it, you had the fundamentals of the Torah, and it talked about Kiddush Hashem. The biblical source of this commandment is God's statement, "Sanctify me amidst the Jewish people." The mitzvah requires us to publicize the true religion to the masses. It must be done without fear of retribution, to the extent that even if a powerful tyrant tries to force us to deny God, we may not obey him. We must rather unquestionably submit to death, not even allowing him to think that we have denied God outwardly, even if we still maintain belief in him in our hearts. And that's when we talked about that issue of pretending to be a Christian or pretending to be a Muslim. And we saw that there were some who claimed that the Rambam had outwardly pretended to be a Muslim. There were even some who maintained, although this is dismissed, that the Rambam had outwardly converted to Islam. We saw that yesterday, that blog where that person quoted various scholars, including Friedlander, who translated the Guide for the Perplexed into English, who all say that there's no serious evidence that the Rambam pretended to convert to Islam. He may have dressed like a Muslim outwardly, but that he converted to Islam. Although these claims were made by people, so they said there's no strong evidence of that. Okay, or no real evidence of it. All right, so now we are at mitzvah number 10. This is the mitzvah to read the Shema. That is, he commanded us to read or recite the Shema in the evening and the morning. Now, the Rambam counts this as one mitzvah. We're going to see Nachmanides counts this as two separate mitzvahs. It says in the Shema itself, it says, B'shachbecha uvkumecha, when you lie down and when you rise up. So the Talmud understands from that that it means you're supposed to say it at the time when people start to lie down and at the time when people rise up, that it's a mitzvah to recite the Shema. And but the Rambam counts it as one mitzvah, the mitzvah to recite the Shema, which is then done in the evening and in the morning. Now, before he had talked about that when it comes to counting mitzvahs, there's a lot like that, where he'll say, like, there's in other words, you don't count every detail of the mitzvah as a separate mitzvah. There's the mitzvah, and then there's the details of the observance of the mitzvah. So he would be consistent in saying that the Shema is one mitzvah, but then it is performed at night and in the day. So he commanded us to recite the Shema in the evening and the morning, and that is his saying, and you shall speak about them. V'dibarta bam, it says, you shall speak about them. V'dibarta bam b'shifbecha v'veisecha v'v'lechtecha v'derech v'shachbecha v'kumecha. So you will speak about them when you sit in your house, when you walk along your way, as you're going to lie down and as you rise up. And the regulations of this commandment have already been explained in the tractate Brachot. And there it is explained that the recitation of the Shema is an obligation from the Torah and is written in the Tosefta. The Tosefta is Braita material, a particular collection of Braita material. It was collected with the same sort of design as Mishnah. So they often parallel Mishnah, Braita. Braita is extraneous material. It's teachings from the time of the Mishnah that did not make it into the Mishnah. You could say they sort of ended up on the editor's floor. So they oftentimes provide extra information or insight into the topic of the Mishnah. So when you're studying Mishnah, you imagine like the first generation of people from the time of the Talmud, when they're studying the Mishnah, so they'd look at the Mishnah, and there is all sorts of data that is provided by the Mishnah. The Mishnah is typically stated as a law, but there's data, obviously, when the law is stated, so you could study that, try to cull all the data you can, ask questions, as many as you can about it, try to extrapolate from the data that you have, try to build the clearest picture you can from it. And then you would look at other materials that are from that time to compare and contrast with it. So that is what we call Braita, or extraneous material. One collection of Braita is Tosefta. Tosefta actually means additional or addendum. But they are Braita material. And usually the way they're presented is they're presented chapter by chapter to run parallel to the Mishnah. So you may sometimes have 4 or 5 Braitot that actually talk about the same subject as the Mishnah. And so they're going to have additional data that you can cull. And then you're going to be able to compare and contrast that data with the Mishnah to get an even fuller picture. So there are times when the Tosefta is the source of a law, because again, it does have extra data. And it is written in the Tosefta, just like the Torah established a set time for the recitation of the Shema, so did the sages establish a time for the prayer. So you see the distinction. The Torah established a time for the Shema. The sages established a time for prayer. This means to say that the times of prayer are not from the Torah. When it means prayer, they mean the Amidah prayer. And then around the Amidah, you have another structure, but the center of prayer is the Amidah. So the Amidah has to be said at a certain time. Now, where did that come from? That came from the sages. The rabbis decided that we're going to pray 3 times a day, and they decided what the content of the prayer is going to be, and they decided when that's going to happen. That's all the rabbis. The Rambam already said that praying every day is biblical, but how to pray and when to pray, that's rabbinic. Whereas the Shema, which is biblical, includes the when to say it in the Shema, because it said when people lie down, that's how they interpret it, when people lie down and when people rise up. Though the actual obligation to pray is from the Torah, as we explained in commandment number 5, and the sages, may their blessed be may the memory be blessed, arrange times for them. And this is the content of their saying. They established the prayers corresponding to the daily sacrifices, meaning that they fixed their times according to the times of the sacrifices. So when it came to prayer, that's how they came up with the times for prayer. Even the number of prayers, it's how they came up with it. So there were 2 primary daily offerings. These were brought every day, no matter what, 365 days a year. They're called the tamid, the everyday offering, or the continual offering. So there's one in the morning, and there's one in the what's called in the evening. The one in the morning has a corresponding prayer to it. So when the rabbis decided that there's going to be, let's say, 3 prayers a day, so they compared it to the offerings. So there's a morning tamid, tamid shel shachar. Now that morning offering is brought at first light. So the shacharis is the morning prayer. It's really sunrise is the key time for that prayer. And that's if you have all the options before you, that's the best time to daven shachrit. That's the best time to daven the Amidah, the morning prayer of shachrit. So that would be you'd actually time it so that you actually began your Amidah at the moment of sunrise. They call it vatikin or hashkama. Vatikin means like the righteous people pray, or hashkama means getting up early. And so that's considered the best time to pray, to daven the Amidah at sunrise, and that corresponds to the tamid of the morning. Then there's a tamid of the evening that could be brought any time that the sun is setting. So it could be brought basically from a little bit after noon, like a half an hour after noon, until the sun actually sets. And that corresponds to the mincha offering. I'm not the mincha offering, the mincha prayer. What we call the mincha prayer corresponds to the afternoon or evening tamid offering. Now there is a third prayer, which is arvit, which is the evening prayer. That third prayer either corresponds to materials that were left on the altar to burn overnight, which they call hector avarim chalavim ve'avarim, the burning of the fats and the limbs. That's when it corresponds to the sacrifices. The Talmud also says that each one of the patriarchs prayed. You have in the end of you have with Avram, it says Avram got up in the morning and and at the place where he had stood. And that is a prayer for Abraham. Then you have Yitzchak, where it says that Yitzchak went lasuach basoda, to converse in the field. And so Avram corresponds to Shachrit, Yitzchak corresponds to Mincha. And then Yaakov, right before the latter vision, it says he came to this place and the sun set. And so that moment corresponds to the evening prayer. So Avram would be Shachris, Yitzchak would be Mincha, and Yaakov be Mariv. But the actual timing of it, the Rambam is suggesting, is based on the sacrifices, which you can see the relationship between prayer and sacrifice. That makes sense. But again, this is all rabbinic, meaning that they fix their times according to the times of the sacrifices. And women are not obligated in this commandment. This is the first time he's told us that. Every other commandment we've had until now applied to everybody, but women do not apply. The reason this does not apply, what he means by, that they're not obligated. This does not mean that women cannot fulfill the mitzvah, but they're not obligated to do the mitzvah. And that's because it is a positive commandment that is time-bound. Positive time-bound commandments do not apply to women. They only apply to men. That is,
Rabbi,
yeah.
When we learn about this, I learned that the prayer was in place, not corresponding, but in place of the sacrifice. But that isn't the truth here. There's the mitzvah of prayer and there's the mitzvah of sacrifice, and it's just that they do it at the times. They correspond. Correct. Okay.
Correct. Now, there are statements that say, there is, like in the Talmud, it will say, what do we do nowadays that we don't have the offerings? And they said, well, when we recite the verses about the offerings, it's treated as if we brought them or something. So those verses are included in the morning prayer. We have a section called Korbanot where we do that. So those, you could say, that section you could say is in place of the Korbanot, because we don't know, but that is not the Amida. That's just reciting the teachings about the various offerings. And then you would get credit as if you brought them, because you're doing the best you can. But the Amida itself is not a replacement. In fact, there is a suggestion that there was some kind of formal, some kind of original Amida that was actually composed by the men of the Great Assembly. We don't have that version of the Amida, but that there was some kind of early version of the Amida that was composed by the men of the Great Assembly, and that was to replace prophecy. When prophecy was taken away, there is a, let's see if I can find this for a second. There is a, let's see this. Let's see if I can find it. If I can't find this quickly, I'm just going to. Yeah, so there are a couple Gemaras that talk about that they, in order that they traded, in order to get rid of the strong urge to worship idols, they traded prophecy for that, or they lost prophecy from that. The Vilna Gaon talks about it. Rav Tzadok talks about it. Rav Tzadok Milublin, that when they killed, when they destroyed the Yetzer Hara for idolatry, they lost prophecy. But then the one I want is where they got Shemona Esrei. Just gonna try this again. To find it somewhere else. Also, I once saw in the writings of Rabbi Soloveitchik where he was talking about that the mode of the Amida, it was the part of the distinct character of the Amida is that we are imitating and perhaps even achieving to some degree the prophecy, that it's not simply prayer, but it's that's why, for instance, you have to have, where did I say it? Just give me one second, if I can. I'm sorry, I keep on saying this, but I'm trying to find this thing. 1 second. Yeah, this is not it. This is not even the volume I'm trying to get. Just wanted some of the language, but I'm not going to find it. Okay, so we ended up getting ourselves involved in the discussion of prayer because he was contrasting it with the Shema. The Shema is mandated by the Torah, as he said, and the times for the Shema are mandated by the Torah. Prayer, on the other hand, he is suggesting, even though the essence of prayer is from the Torah, but the fact that we do it 3 times a day and the timing for it is from the rabbis. Yeah, so, and again, when we say prayer, they primarily are talking about the Amida. Around the Amida, there's all sorts of materials that all have their own purposes, and they're very important. And it's the Amida that has its particular times. And that was what I was suggesting is by design more in the mode of prophecy than simply prayer. Part of the thing of prophecy is that you are looking for a connection with the divine. And when you get the connection of the divine, it's like a 2-way channel. It's not just a 1-way channel. Even though much of our experience of prayer feels like a 1-way channel from us to God, but that is not the goal. And that's why you'll see all sorts of stuff about proper intent for the Amida and sort of the all right, we'll go to one thing because I can't help myself. One should wait. This is the Shulchan Aruch. This is Rabbi Yosef Karo. One should wait 1 halachic hour before he rises to pray the Amida in order to focus his heart on the omnipresent. And one should wait 1 halachic hour after prayer so that it should not seem like a burden to him and that he's quick to leave. One way we fulfill this is by the prayers we say before the Amida and the prayers we say afterwards. But there's obviously one should stand to pray with reverence and humility and not in the midst of laughter, frivolity, or purposeless matters, and not in the midst of anger. Rather, he should pray in the midst of joy, like the words of comfort from the Torah. For example, those that follow the redemption from Egypt, the blessings after the recitation of the Shema, or that follow Tehillah David, where it is written, and he will do the will of those who revere him, and Hashem guards all those who love him. We do not stand and pray in the midst of judging a case or in the midst of studying so that one's heart will not be troubled with or distracted by it. Rather, we stand to pray in the midst of like some kind of closure, some kind of conclusive law. When one gets up to pray, if he's standing outside the land of Israel, he should turn his face towards the land of Israel and focus on Jerusalem. If he was standing in the Jerusalem, he would turn his face to the temple and focus on the Holy of Holies. Again, why even the Holy of Holies? Because prophecy came from between the cherubs and the Holy of Holies. Here it says, one should place one's hand over one's heart as if bound, the right hand over the left, and stand like a servant before one's teacher with terror, awe, and fear. And one should not place one's hands over one's head.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
In just Googling just Amida and prophecy and stuff, a few things have come up, like they believe that there's profound mysteries in the Amida. Prophetic mysteries. And it says that in 1815 in Germany, I guess a bitter dispute was about whether you could say the Amida in German, in German, because
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Oh, that's good. One who prays needs to concentrate on the meaning of the words which one brings forth from a mouth. One should consider as if the divine presence is opposite him, and remove all distracting thoughts from one until one's thought and intention remain purely about one's prayer. One should consider as if you're speaking before a king of flesh and blood, and we're organizing one's words beautifully and concentrating on them so as not to stumble. All the more so before the King of Kings, King of Kings, and the Holy One who is blessed, who examines all thoughts. So did the pious ones and the men of action who would seclude themselves and concentrate on their prayers until they would transcend their corporeality and strengthen their mental power until nearly arriving at the level of prophecy. See, he's like, this is the goal of the Amida. And if another thought comes to one, so anyways, he says that. Korov l'malasanavu, you're getting close to prophecy itself. So obviously it's not prophecy, but you hear this language. And so that is the mode of that we're trying to achieve in prayer. Somebody so close to that of a prophet who's in prophecy. Alrighty. We will talk more about these kinds of things tomorrow as we get together.
Rabbi, thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
All right. Be well.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.